'cause I did pain. I feel it in my brain. The thrashing, the bashing, the clawing, the thrashing, the giving, the getting, the total blood driving me insane. Oh, hey. So today we're checking out filming locations for another great Chips episode, Season 5, Episode 16, Battle of the Bands, also known as the Punk episode. Let's go see what we can find. Our episode begins with people playing volleyball and running across the sand, enjoying a beautiful California day on the beach just beside the Santa Monica Pier. We see people roller skating and skateboarding and going for afternoon strolls along Oceanfront Walk, again just beside the Santa Monica Pier. But little did they know about the punk rock chaos that was going on just minutes from their fun. Once the punks are done creating anarchy and slashing all of the tires in this parking lot, they decide to head back to their motorcycles. Now those motorcycles would have been parked right here against the curb in between where I'm standing and that utility pole. And as they're getting on their motorcycles, they notice a van parked right here for new wave artist Snow Pink. They decide they want what's inside the van, but unfortunately the doors are locked, but thankfully they've got a plan. Did you know if you wrap a chain around a door handle, it yanks right open? Huh, good to know. And as they're breaking into the van, if you look hard enough, you can see this house behind them. It's one of the few houses up here that hasn't really changed much in the last 40 or so years. Meanwhile, while all of this is going on, Ponch and John and Bear are on the highway? No, they're hanging out in front of the beach, and a lot has changed right here. However, this section of buildings still matches up with what we see them standing in front of. Meanwhile, back at the van while they're unloading it, one of the punks gets knocked over, knocks the van out of gear, and away he goes. Hey, that's not them. So supposedly they're riding their motorcycles right behind him, telling him to jump out of the van, but he's still going down the hill in that neighborhood in Los Angeles, and they're riding their motorcycles back by the beach. Notice those two tall, skinny trees. That's how you know where he jumps out of the van. Uh-oh, look out. I believe this is the exact spot where the van knocks her off her bike. Notice that garage door and then the stone wall with the set of steps. And while I was standing here checking out the house, I didn't even notice that right behind me is an empty lot with a really great view of downtown Los Angeles. And all of this is happening on the same street where they first break into the van. Now, it was almost impossible to match things up for this scene because absolutely none of the buildings are the same right here. Every building has changed, but I believe that the van was coming down this street, and then right over here is where the car is parked that the van launches off of and ends up in the sand. And it also appears that some of the equipment out on the sand has been moved around, so it was impossible to match that up as well. But one thing that's still the same right here is this area was a parking lot and this guardrail was here at the time. As the punks round the corner onto Oceanfront Walk, Ponch and John spot them, and the chase is on. The punks are still on the run, but they're no longer by the beach. They're back in the neighborhood where they tried to steal the stuff from the van. We see them come down this extremely steep and narrow street, and then they round the corner right here and then make a right on the next street and head up the hill. A few moments later, Ponch and John come around the corner and then head up the same hill. They would have rounded the corner right here and then made a right going up the hill, which is now completely covered by trees, and there's also a house blocking the street. After a short chase through some hills in Los Angeles, we're now back at the beach, but the view that we would have got of the punks coming back to the beach is now blocked by fences, and they would have come around the corner and then come down this street, which used to be a lot more narrow. It's been widened a lot since then. As Ponch and John come down the hill, they have to stop dead in their tracks because of a woman on roller skates. Safety first. They finally get going again and they head right towards the Boathouse restaurant, which is now a Bubba Gump's. Ponch and John cautiously ride underneath the pier, which is the punk rock hangout. Now, things under the pier have changed a lot because they've added a bunch of lanes. There's now a running lane and a bicycle lane, so they've widened this whole area underneath the pier. Once Ponch and John leave, they take the trash can off of the punk who's hiding with the guitar that they stole. Now, it's almost impossible to tell exactly where that was, especially since so much has changed, but it was in between a couple of pillars. Meanwhile, back at the scene of the accident, Ponch and John are parked in front of a hot dog on a stick writing an incident report when Bonnie introduces them to Snow Pink. And this is where that hot dog on a stick was that we see them parked in front of, but unfortunately, the original building was just recently torn down and a newer, slightly bigger building was built in the exact same place. And it's unfortunate because this was actually the very first hot dog on a stick, and it's still going to be a hot dog on a stick, but the original building is gone forever. Ponch and John decide to go visit the Breaking Point, a local rock club where Snow Pink performs and where they're going to be having the Battle of the Bands. So Ponch and John were coming down Crescent Heights, and then they make a right turn onto Santa Monica Boulevard, and right here would have been the Breaking Point, which was actually the Starwood, a pretty famous punk rock club that was located here until it mysteriously caught fire and then was eventually demolished. So roughly right here is where they were parking their motorcycles, and I can't believe that I just noticed on the top of the sign it says CHP, which stands for Crescent Height Plaza, but CHP. Coincidence? Well, yes, but still. Back at the beach, for some reason, Ponch is riding by himself, and he's headed through this intersection, which once again looks completely different. But as he looks to his left, he notices someone in a parking lot beating on a tire, and he assumes it must be the person responsible for all the tire slashings. He would have been riding right here, and he looks into this parking lot, and that's where he sees the person beating on the tire. He rides past this building and then makes a U-turn in front of all of these garages. Notice that punk hanging out on the corner. Now, this is the building that he rides past, and it actually still looks the same, but it's blocked by this dumpster at the moment. He then makes a U-turn in front of all of these garages, and that's the corner where the punk is hanging out. He pulls into the parking lot and parks in front of this building. Take note of the windows and the balcony, and this is pretty much right where he pulls up. Of course, the building has been remodeled a lot, but you can see the windows and the balcony still match up. And much to Ponch's delight, instead of being a tire-slashing punk, it's a lady in a bikini using a tire iron to beat on her tire because it had been slashed, and that's how she's trying to fix it. You know, we've all been there. Of course, Ponch begins changing her tire for her while she begins to juggle. What the hell is going on here? Ponch and John head down to Hollywood to visit Snow Pink at her place of business, a rock and roll fashion shop called Passion Fashion. Now that was on Hollywood Boulevard at Cherokee, and the store that was used for Passion Fashion is now Sports Center. The camera zooms in on the shop, and there was an awning over the door right here with a banner on it that said Passion Fashion. Unfortunately, the inside of the store looks nothing like what we see in the show. I have a feeling that was a set. Now I know that the store probably would have changed a lot over the years, but really nothing matched up, and I really think it was just a set. Back at the station, they're all hanging out in the locker room talking about the punk rock disease, and that's when Officer Grossman tells them that he actually enjoys going to punk shows, and they can't believe their ears. And that's when Grossman starts demonstrating the politics of punk rock dancing. This has got to be one of the best scenes in any CHiPs episode ever.
Well, the more people you bash, the better damn dancer you are.
There's a bunch of punks hanging out in front of these buildings in Hollywood. The camera then zooms out and pans up, and we see Payne on the roof having a small band practice. And they would have been on the roof right there where it says Virtual Dining Concepts. Now this is the first time we hear them playing the song I Dig Payne. This is exactly where it would have happened, with the Capitol Records building on the left and the Knickerbocker Hotel on the right. One of the punks sees Ponch and John pull up in front of the building, and it makes him extremely nervous. And he would have been standing right here. You can see this lamppost and this apartment building behind him. Of course, Thrasher doesn't care at all. He takes the bass guitar and throws it off the roof. It hits the windshield of a car and causes a multi-car accident. Ponch and John head over and check on just one person, even though it was a multi-car accident, but whatever. And that would have been right here where this taxi is parked. The punks take off on their motorcycles and make a right turn on Cahuenga. Ponch and John shortly head after them, and you can now clearly see the sign for 7-Eleven that's on the corner, which is still there. However, the gas station is gone. Now this is where things get a little weird. They're chasing them through a residential neighborhood, but when it cuts back to John, there's now office buildings behind him. Even he looks confused. The camera now pans back to the house on the corner, and we find out that it belongs to one of the punks. He's hiding out in the garage. He somehow teleported himself from his motorcycle into the garage. The punks turn onto Vista Street from Franklin Avenue in Hollywood, and here's that set of stairs and the lamppost that we see as they come around the corner. Of course, things have been developed and changed a bit here. They come around the corner, and then they head up Vista Street, and right here is the last remaining part of that wall that we see them pass by. They head all the way to the end of Vista Street where it dead ends, and they make a right turn. And right down here at the end of this street, this is where they hit the dead end with the chain link fence. This is now an entrance to Runyon Canyon. At the time, there was no hiking trail here, so it was just a chain link fence with some barbed wire. By the time Ponch and John show up, the punks are long gone, and the only thing left are some pieces of leather jacket and blood. We get a quick shot of Central Station, but again, the original building was torn down back in 2002, and the only thing that still matches up is the freeway behind the building. We now head back to the Punk's house because it's time for band practice. Unfortunately, they're not doing too good after cutting up their hands on the barbed wire.
Come up and rip my shirt. I dig the trashing, the giving, the getting, and the total blood.
Meanwhile, John's hanging out across the street from the breaking point, feeling concerned about the upcoming Battle of the Bands. As Ponch pulls up, you can see this row of businesses behind him. But everything across the street from the Starwood has also been demolished. It's now time for Battle of the Bands, and everything that John was afraid was going to happen, well, it ends up happening. The crowd gets rowdy, they start throwing chairs, and fights begin to break out, and it's complete chaos. Luckily, John breaks in and brings the police, and he's able to be the voice of reason.
Hey, these kids are not the troublemakers. Would you listen to me, please?
Meanwhile, in the alley out back, Thrasher tries to escape, but Ponch shows up in the nick of time and cuts him off. With gas leaking out of the motorcycle, Thrasher pulls out his lighter and threatens to blow him up. What's Ponch gonna do? Maybe blow it out? Yep, that makes sense. And did anybody happen to notice that Thrasher, the leader of the Punks, is JD from American Me? My mind is totally blown. Everything is now right in the world, and we're all rewarded with a little bit of this. Another one. Especially you from Hood. Cause I wait, what are you doing? What?
Are you using my keyboard?
Yeah, you're messing up my video.
Where's the green screen in my room?
Because I'm making a video. I want to be a punk. I want to be.
Punk? You're a 42-year-old man.
No, I want to be a punk. I dig pain, and my band's gonna make it.
Dig pain?
Yeah, I dig pain with